This is part two from 7. Evening settled gently, spreading a soft violet haze over the rooftops. Miriam carried her cup of tea to the living room where her favorite armchair waited. The cushion had softened over years of use, forming a small indentation that perfectly fit the shape of her body. She sank into it, feeling the subtle comfort of familiarity. Outside, the wind shifted, carrying the faint scent of rain and distant cooking fires. She picked up a notebook she had been keeping for months, its pages filled with uneven handwriting. It wasn't a journal in the traditional sense, not really. It was more a collection of fleeting thoughts. A phrase overheard on the bus, a reflection after a conversation, a memory that had stirred unexpectedly. She often hesitated before writing, unsure whether her small thoughts mattered. Yet when she did, a quiet satisfaction followed. There was no audience, no approval needed, only her own acknowledgement of noticing life's minute details. Miriam remembered a conversation from a few years ago with her brother Thomas. He had been talking about a new project at work, brimming with ambition and plans. Miriam had listened, nodding, while a sense of inadequacy crept in. She had felt the familiar twinge of shame for living a life so uneventful in comparison. But that evening, as she read over her notebook entries, she realized something subtle had changed. Her life wasn't smaller or less worthy, it was simply different. And in those differences, she had carved a quiet, unspoken joy. Later that night, she prepared a small dinner, simple grains, roasted vegetables, a sprinkle of herbs she had grown herself. As she plated her meal, she noticed a slight crack in the ceramic bowl she had used for years. Once she might have been annoyed, thinking it imperfect, flawed. Tonight she saw beauty in it, a testament to resilience, to the history embedded in everyday objects. She sat at her table and ate slowly, savoring each bite. The taste was ordinary, yet extraordinary in its constancy, a reminder that nourishment itself could carry a subtle happiness. After dinner, Miriam moved to the window once more. The city lights blinked on one by one, and the streets, previously quiet, began to hum faintly with evening activity. A lone cyclist passed by, headlamp casting a cone of light on wet asphalt. She wondered about the people she saw, fleeting as they were, where they were going, what small joys they were experiencing, what unspoken fears they carried. In the vast tapestry of existence, her own life might have seemed small, yet it was a vital thread in its quiet continuity. Miriam's thoughts drifted to her neighbors. Across the hall, she had noticed a man carefully hanging laundry in the afternoon sun, a small ritual that seemed mundane yet imbued with patience. Next door, a woman sat on her balcony with a steaming mug, staring at the horizon as if it held secrets just for her. Miriam found herself feeling connected, not through words or grand gestures, but through the recognition of shared, ordinary human moments. Joy did not need proof. It was woven through these acts, visible only to those willing to notice. Later, she called her friend Layla. Their conversations were rarely urgent. They did not need to fill silences with words. Tonight, Layla spoke about her garden, about a new recipe, about a stray cat that had started visiting her doorstep. Miriam listened, letting the details sink in, smiling at the image of the small, persistent cat. When the call ended, Miriam felt a warmth that had nothing to do with excitement or novelty. It was a quiet assurance that the world was full of small wonders, each accessible without striving or proving oneself. By the time she prepared for bed, Miriam felt a gentle shift inside her, imperceptible to the outside observer, but profound in her own awareness. She understood that courage, joy, and self-acceptance could thrive without accolades, without loud recognition. They could exist quietly, anchored in presence, in noticing, in appreciating life's subtle rhythms. She closed her eyes, grateful for another ordinary day, and let sleep come without insistence, without expectation. When Clara woke up, the first thing she noticed was the sunlight. It wasn't the harsh glare of midday, nor the soft diffusion of overcast skies. This was the gentle, clear light of late morning, the kind that bathed everything in a calming glow. She stretched, feeling the pleasant ache of muscles that had rested well during the night. For a moment, she simply existed, aware of the subtle symphony of sounds that marked this particular place, the distant hum of traffic, the rhythmic chirp of birds in a nearby tree, the soft murmur of her apartment building's ventilation. These weren't sounds that assaulted her eardrums. Rather, they were the comforting backdrop of her daily life, a sonic equivalent of the well-worn grooves in her favorite chair. Her morning routine was as ingrained in her as the patterns on the wallpaper. She made tea not because she needed its caffeine, but because the ritual of its preparation grounded her in the present. The scent of ginger and lemon peel infused in hot water was more than a beverage. It was a signal to her mind that it was time to wake up, to transition from the hazy realm of dreams to the clarity of daylight. As she sipped her tea, she looked out the window, observing the street below. A delivery van pulled up, its driver patiently waiting for an elderly woman to retrieve her groceries. Onlookers might have seen a mundane transaction between a worker and a customer, yet for Clara, there was poetry in the interaction. She marveled at the silent understanding displayed in the brief exchange, the subtle cues, the unspoken agreements that bound these two strangers in a shared moment. The rest of her morning unfolded in a similar vein. A walk to the corner store for fresh bread became an exploration of textures and colors. The feel of cool concrete beneath her feet, the vibrant hues of flowers displayed outside a shop, the rough bark of a tree she passed every day, but had never truly seen before. These were the treasures that filled Clara's day. Not in a sense of material acquisition, but in a spiritual appreciation of being alive. At work, amidst the usual tasks and interactions, she sought out these small moments of connection. A word of encouragement to a colleague, a patient explanation to a confused client, a genuine smile in response to a friendly greeting. These were the moments that fueled her spirit, anchoring her in the present reality. It wasn't that Clara was unaware of the world's larger concerns. She, too, worried about global conflicts, environmental degradation, the relentless march of time. Yet she had chosen a different path, a life guided by the principle that joy did not need proof. In a world that often equated significance with grand gestures and sweeping changes, she found meaning in the quiet corners of existence. And in doing so, she discovered a depth of fulfillment that transcended the clamor of societal expectations. As the day waned and shadows stretched across the city, Clara felt a deep sense of contentment. Her life may not have been filled with extraordinary events, yet in the ordinary, she had found magic. She had learned to appreciate the subtle beauty that permeated every facet of existence, from the gentle morning light to the shared smiles of strangers, from the comforting aroma of her tea to the textured world beneath her feet. For Clara, life was not too small for joy. Rather, joy was woven into the very fabric of life, waiting to be discovered by those who had the courage to look beyond the surface, to seek out the extraordinary in the ordinary. And in that discovery, she found not just happiness, but a profound sense of purpose. When the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the city, Elias sat on a park bench, his gaze fixed on the cascading water of a nearby fountain. The gentle roar of the cascading water mingled with the distant laughter of children and the soft murmur of evening conversations. He didn't focus on these sounds, though. Instead, he let them fade into the background, becoming part of the soothing ambience that surrounded him. Elias's attention was inward, ruminating on the events of the day, not in a critical or judgmental way, but with a detached curiosity. He recalled a heated argument he had witnessed at the grocery store, a display of anger that had left him unsettled. Then he remembered a small act of kindness, a stranger holding the door open for him, a gesture that had brought a faint smile to his face. These memories were not analyzed or categorized. They simply surfaced in his mind, as transient and fleeting as the clouds drifting across the evening sky. A sense of calm washed over him. He knew that many wouldn't understand this state of being, wouldn't comprehend why he would choose to spend his evening alone in a park instead of pursuing excitement or comfort. To them, his life appeared too small, devoid of the adventures or successes that seemed necessary for a fulfilling existence. But Elias found beauty in the simplicity of his day-to-day reality. He found joy not in grand gestures or achievements, but in the subtle, unassuming moments that made up his life. As the first stars began to appear, dotting the darkening sky like scattered diamonds, Elias stood up from the bench. He walked slowly, not with any urgency, allowing his senses to absorb the nuances of the evening. The cooling breeze on his skin, the deepening indigo above him, the distant strains of a street musician's violin. These were not mere sensations, but anchors to the present moment, grounding him in the beauty of everyday existence. Returning home, Elias opened his windows wide, inviting the evening air to mingle with the soft glow of his lamplight. Inside his quiet apartment, he made himself a cup of tea, not because he needed the warmth, but because the ritual brought a sense of grounding to his thoughts. Settling into his favorite chair, he reached for a book, not necessarily to read, but to hold in his hands, to trace the embossed letters on its spine, to feel the weight of its pages in his lap. For Elias, books were more than repositories of words. They were tangible reminders of the richness of human thought and experience. He wasn't immune to the world's concerns. He, too, worried about the state of humanity, about the challenges that lay ahead. Yet, in the quiet sanctuary of his home, he cultivated a haven of peace. He sought not to erase these worries, but to coexist with them, acknowledging their presence without letting them consume him. As the night deepened, Elias felt a profound contentment. His life might seem too small to some, lacking the drama or grandeur that society often glorified. But in that apparent simplicity, he found his joy. He had learned that happiness did not need proof, that life's most profound truths were often hidden in plain sight. All one needed was the willingness to see. The old woman stood at the edge of the bustling marketplace, her gaze sweeping over the vibrant scene before her. The air was thick with the scent of spices, ripe fruit, and freshly baked bread. Merchants called out, trying to entice customers to their wares. Bartering echoed between stalls, mingling with the laughter of children and the chatter of gossip. Yet none of this cacophony reached the old woman's ears. She was not here for the shopping, nor did she yearn to acquire any of the colorful trinkets on display. She had come to the market simply to be among the multitude, to witness the vibrant tapestry of human life that unfolded daily in this square. To her, the true essence of the market lay not in its commercial transactions, but in the shared experience, the coming together of diverse individuals under the open sky. She watched a young mother patiently coaxing her child to try a piece of fruit. She saw a group of friends animatedly discussing something over cups of sweet mint tea. She observed an elderly gentleman examining a loaf of bread with the focused air of a seasoned connoisseur. In these simple acts, the old woman found a profound sense of connection. She saw reflections of her own life, her own joys and concerns mirrored in the eyes of these strangers. And then there was the music. From a hidden corner, the lilting notes of a flute drifted into the air, weaving its way through the market's din. The melody was not mournful, nor was it jubilant. It was simply an offering, a gift of sound that enriched the surroundings without demanding attention. The old woman recognized the music as a silent testament to life's beauty, a reminder that moments of grace could be found even within the everyday. As the afternoon sun began its slow descent, casting long shadows across the market, the old woman felt a deep sense of gratitude. She was not too old to find joy in such simple things, nor was her life too small to contain happiness. In the bustling marketplace, she had discovered a truth that resonated deeply within her. Life did not need proof. Its richness was evident in the smallest details, in the shared smiles, the quiet observations, and the unscripted moments of connection. All one needed to do was slow down, open one's senses, and be present to witness the silent poetry that unfolded all around. When the first stars emerged in the twilight sky, painting pinpricks of silver on the vast canvas of darkness, Elias sat by his window. The city lights twinkled below, each point of light representing a story unfolding, a life being lived. He wasn't captivated by the spectacle, but by the quiet understanding that in those distant apartments, just as in his own, there were moments of joy, sorrow, hope, and dreams. His thoughts drifted to the park bench where he had spent the fading daylight hours. A strange sense of ownership washed over him, as if the bench belonged to him and him alone. Yet he knew it didn't. It was just a random park bench. He had chosen to sit there not because it was special, but because it was ordinary, because in its ordinariness, it offered him a connection to the rhythm of life. He remembered the weathered texture of the wood beneath him, the gentle sway of the tree branches overhead, the precise angle of sunlight that had warmed his face. These weren't significant events, yet they formed a tapestry of experience that was uniquely his. In that realization, he understood that his life, far from being too small, was vibrantly real. It wasn't meant to be exceptional. It was meant to be lived. The absence of grand adventures didn't diminish his existence. It allowed room for the subtle joys that painted his days. The taste of a freshly brewed cup of tea, the unexpected compliment from a stranger, the silent understanding shared with a passerby. These were not mere occurrences. They were threads that wove together the rich fabric of his life. As the night deepened, Elias felt a profound sense of contentment. He had learned that happiness wasn't something to be constantly pursued. It was already there, nestled in the everyday, waiting to be embraced. His life might seem insignificant in the grand scheme of things, but in its quiet unfolding, he found beauty, purpose, and most importantly, joy that needed no proof, only presence.